Hi, you guys. I have written 3 books so far, if you hadn't heard about this yet. So I wanted to read a chapter of my first book for you all in case you haven't bought it yet and wanted to know what it was like. So it's called Boss Man by Shari Goss, and it's the first in the Men of Circle M Ranch series. And I'm going to read it to you. Mac Latner and Cal Stevens just finished their dinner when they got the call of a possible fatal multi-vehicle crash between a commercial transport truck and a minivan. Well, that didn't sound good. Mac flicked on the lights and headed to the scene. Please, Lord, help Cal and me on this call and help those touched by this tragedy in your embrace. Mac prayed. Nothing in Mac or Cal's time on the small-town police force had prepared them for the accident scene they arrived at. Cal bravely offered to go over to the mingled minivan, but Mac couldn't bring himself to let his partner, a family man, deal with what he was sure to see. Mac sent Cal to deal with the drunk driver who was stumbling towards his transport truck. Mac took a deep breath and, with more confidence than he felt, headed to the completely totaled minivan. As he forced each step forward, he whispered another prayer for strength and those affected by this tragedy. As soon as his eyes caught a glimpse inside the vehicle, it was abundantly clear there were no survivors. This was also a sight he would never forget. Cal was tucking the survivor into another patrol car as Mac started towards him. He was feeling sick to his stomach as the dinner he had just eaten was threatening to make a return trip. Cal met him halfway and said, "Are you okay, partner? You look like you saw a ghost." Mac nodded as he fought to control his emotions. "It's an ugly crash, Cal. No survivors." They heard the ding of a text come in from the severely banged up phone in the minivan, sent from one hot mama. "Where are you? Did you get lost?" Mac's heart broke for this woman. He knew that he and his partner were the right men for the job to inform this woman of the loss she just endured. Cal and Mac secured her address and stopped to pray for Rebecca Lynn, then looked at each other, steeled their hearts, and headed out. There was a lot of upsides to being on the force of a small town, and one was that they could take as long as they needed to be with Mrs. Lynn. Other officers could handle the calls coming in. As they drove, Mac kept thinking about the term one hot mama. They must have had one amazing marriage. He pulled up in front of the house and sat for a minute. He was not in a hurry to knock on this door. One more quick prayer, but this one was purely selfish. God, please help me get through this. Help me say the right things. Give me peace. As he looked up, Cal was looking at the house, and Mac immediately recognized where they were. It hadn't registered before. Old man Fred lived next door, and they had to deliver him home all hours of the day because of his drunken escapades. The amazing couple next door always smiled, waved, and sometimes brought them water or snacks for the road. He had a sudden snapshot of Ms. Lynn holding that baby boy sleeping and trying to wrestle him into the house. Her husband jogging up, laughing, grabbing the door, and slipping the baby into his arms. That was last week. He remembered how in love they looked, and now, well, he would never look at that house the same, and he wasn't sure how Mrs. Lynn could either. Well, Mac, enough stalling. Time to go destroy a beautiful woman's world. Rebecca was not one to worry until she was sure there was something to worry about. But it wasn't like John not to answer when she texted. And he would always get the kids home before bedtime, especially on her birthday. It'd been a rough day with the kids, and he knew she needed to cuddle up on the couch with her husband and a glass of wine. She had spent hours trying to convince herself everything was okay until she saw the police car pull up in front of her house. The illusion died before her eyes. Why were they just sitting out front? She could make out the one officer looking towards the house, and the other wasn't looking up. Oh, this couldn't be good at all. She waited until they knocked on the door, but could barely open it, and couldn't get her voice to work enough to speak. She recognized these two officers. Dealing with Fred was a lot of work and patience. They were always great with him, and his poor wife Betty, who didn't know what to do with him, but wouldn't give up on him either. They were looking at her, and the younger one, Officer Latner, according to his name tag, looked very pale. Becca offered for them to come in, and Officer Latner looked at Officer Stevens, who said, "We can, but why don't we tell you why we came first? Then you decide if you want us to come in or not." Rebecca started shaking harder and was struggling to breathe. Officer Stevens said, "Go ahead, Mac," and put his hand on his partner's back and patted him. Mac looked at Rebecca and said, Ms. Lynn, we believe your husband and 2 children were driving east on Main Street in a silver minivan earlier this evening. Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded, still just staring, barely breathing. Mac said, there was an accident, ma'am. No survivors. She collapsed. She hadn't passed out, per se, but her whole body turned to jello. She realized she was staring like a zombie, but couldn't function and couldn't get her eyes to focus. Matt caught her, turned around with a horrified look and said, now do we come in? Cal nodded, pointed to the couch, and went to find the kitchen. Thankfully, the house layout was the same as Fred's, so it was easy to find things. Cal found 3 bottles of water in the fridge and brought one back for each of them. Mac held the limp woman looking completely lost, but was sitting on the couch where Cal had directed him. So he started thinking about all of them. He told Mac to get her to drink. She wasn't functioning on her own, so she did whatever Mac asked of her and put her head on his shoulder. Evidence of the kids lay scattered around the room, 2 glasses of wine already poured and waiting on the table. Cal's heart broke for this woman. He started gathering up the toys and kids' things and tucked them into one of the rooms at the back of the house. He also tidied up anything of John's and brought them upstairs to the master bedroom. He was thinking like a dad and husband now. She lay there staring for about 30 minutes. Mac just kept giving her sips of water and wouldn't put her down. Cal could tell Mac felt responsible for her, even though he had no reason to other than the job. After a while, Rebecca started to talk. She sounded very far away, very robotic. Today's my birthday. It's been a hard day with the kids. I didn't want to do anything. I sent them away. I told John to take them out and do something and then come back. Put them to bed. He and I could celebrate. I didn't even get dressed up for him. He didn't complain. He just took the kids and left. The last few moments I spent with him were making him take the kids and get out. That's what I said. Take them and get out. I laughed like it was a joke, but I wanted them all just to go. And here I am, wearing a tank top. He got me after I told him I felt fat and ugly. My body hasn't been the same since having kids. One hot mama, right. I wasn't a good wife or mother today, and that's their last memory of me. Her voice broke as sobbing began. Mac just hugged her and let her cry while shooting Cal a panicked look for help. Cal came over, squatted in front of her, and patted her arm. Listen, ma'am, I have a wife, kids, and grandkids. I will tell you, if that man took the kids and left you alone on your birthday, it was because he loved you and he knew you needed a break. He knew you loved those kids. I have been the dad taking the kids when my wife was at a breaking point. The kids just think, wow, what a great mom. She let Daddy take us out for her birthday. What a fun adventure. Rebecca looked over at Cal. Do you think so, Officer Stevens? When he nodded, she threw herself into his arms and sobbed some more. Cal stayed there, patting her back, and finally said, ma'am, I'm Cal, and this is my partner and friend, Mac. Seems like we are far past being Officers Latner and Stevens at this point, Mrs. Lynn. Rebecca, she managed to mutter between sobs. Then all of a sudden she jumped up. Oh my, I didn't offer you drinks. Cal said, don't worry, ma'am. We helped ourselves. Oh, thank goodness. Cal looked at Mac and mouthed the word shock. Mac nodded. She looked around the room and tears started flowing again. You cleaned up. Cal nodded. Yes, ma'am. Their walkie-talkie went off, paging them both. Cal put a hand up to Mac. I got it, and disappeared into the kitchen. Rebecca began pacing and back and forth, mumbling broken thoughts. What do I do with myself now? How do I stay in this house? It's too quiet here. It's so lonely. Do you know that spot over there on the couch smells like John? So does the recliner over there. Not sure I can handle that today. And every piece in this house we picked out together. What do I do? Where do I go? She saw Cal come back in the room. You have to go, don't you? Who's going to bring Fred home? Cal chuckled. No, ma'am. Someone else is on Fred babysitting duty tonight. We're here as long as you need us. So you pilled crazy Rebecca babysitting duty tonight. Lucky you. I wonder if you will miss Fred. She said it with no humor in her eyes, but she tried to smirk, except tears poured out instead. John would have thought that was hilarious, she muttered. They gave her some pathetic smiles. Both officers sat and started to get comfortable. She handed Mac the remote and said, I'm so tired now, but I'm not sure I will ever sleep again. Mac said, lay down on the couch over here and try to rest. Cal stopped Mac, reached for a blanket, sniffed it, and then laid it down on the couch under where her head would go, inviting her to lay down. Cal went and got a fresh blanket from where he knew Fred's linen closet was and brought it to her. Mac gave him a questioning look, and Cal whispered, doesn't smell like him. Mac was thankful for a partner who knew about women and marriage and at least the concept of what it might be like to lose your spouse. He was completely at a loss himself and would have laid the woman right on the spot that smelled like her deceased husband. Mac turned on the ball game and then wondered if he should or not. He looked at Cal, who seemed unsure too, and they both glanced over at Rebecca. She wiggled herself up and was laying against the armrest, but could see the Toronto Blue Jays play. Must have been okay with her. The tears flowed down her cheeks. She just stared at the game, then glanced at Mac and said, "At least they are beating the Sox." He smirked at that. True Canadian girl. A few minutes later, she had dozed off, and Cal texted his wife. It was quitting time, but both men had already decided that he wasn't about to leave her for now. Mac heard Cal call in to inform the station they would probably end up staying to watch her through the night. Cal grabbed their reports in the car, and they filled in everything they could while it was still fresh. So again, that is Boss Man. This first in the Men of Circle M Ranch.